discussing about legal finance. So I guess the rest will join us as we go, so that we try and keep the time. So as we begin, maybe just as an icebreaker, you can use the chat box or the reactions. I want you to share with us your favorite emoji, the emoji that you usually use the most. You can use it on the chat box or as a reaction. Ni gani emoji unapenda kutumia sana? Or the one you've used this week a lot, like it's just right there on your phone. Which emoji are you? Yeah, I can see the laughing one with the tears. Thank you, Clara. Ah, wait, okay. Levis, that's a scary one. Brand celebrations. Hey, Winfred, which one have you been using a lot this week, or do you really like using? Hey, machozi, Levis, do you need some help? Tutakuona hapo nyuma ya tent. Winfred, yako ilikuwa gani? Eric, karibu. We are just doing an icebreaker before we start as we wait for the rest. We want to know which emoji you use a lot ama which one you really like using. Oh, ya kucheka na machozi. Thank you, Winfred. Hey, Levis, itabidi tukuone hapo nyuma ya tent. Sijui kwa nini unalia na skull face we. Though apparently as a millennial, I discovered that the Gen Z going downwards. The emojis don't just mean the emojis. Like the love hearts ziko ya purple sijui ndio ya nini, ya pink ndio ya nini. Woi, me as a millennial, I just use them randomly. So maybe Levis ako na secret code atatuambia. Oh, unacheka mpaka unalia. Okay, sawa. Aha. Okay. Interesting. So karibuni sana to today's session. I think mine is the thumbs up. I think I've just been using that one a lot because I've been in many virtual classes these past 2 weeks. So ninaweka two thumbs up encourage mwalimu, kusema nimeshika, kusema sina swali. Yeah, so karibuni sana to the session. So my name is Gladys Wanjao and I'm the founder of Indelible Impact, where our tagline is building safer, smarter, sustainable workplaces together. And the company was actually born out of the belief that compliance and systems management should be, simple, practical, impactful, and profitable and should be really able to drive growth for organizations rather than, come out of fear and a lot of confusion. So basically, that's who we are as Indelible Impact. We're a young company, but we are hoping to have a lot of influence, a lot of impact, and just be able to support specifically SMEs to be able to be more compliant, to be more into systems management, and to be able to be more structured so that we are able to help them protect their triple bottom line, which is the people, planet, and profit. So karibuni sana. Hi Jackie, hi Eric, karibuni. We were just sharing the emojis that we have used a lot this week or we like using, like ni gani inakubamba during this course of the maybe the last 2 weeks. Which one have you been using a lot? You can share as well on your as a reaction or on the chat box. You're welcome to join in. So I think we will just start off. And the rest will find us as we go. Okay, so Just a minute. I put it in presentation mode. I hope you can all see my screen, and we are ready to start off. So as I said, we are talking about legal compliance, which is the solid ground on which systems and organizations should actually build. And our question for today that we need to ponder on is your business truly protected and compliant, or is it simply, staying under the radar or chini ya maji, hoping to remain unnoticed? That's the question I want you to ponder as we go through the session. You can answer as we go along on the chat box. So, as I said, my name is Gladys Wanjao, and I am a lead expert with NEMA. I am also a lead auditor for ISO 9001. And in the last month, which was September, we had a masterclass and webinar just like this one. And we were looking at ISO systems, and we were trying to simplify ISO so that it is more practical and impactful. And we introduced the aspect of compliance compliance or compliance obligation. Other ISO standards call it legal requirements. And as we finished off on that topic, we had this statistic from Nairobi University that was talking about how 90% of the workplaces in Nairobi are actually aware of OSHA 2007, but only 64.5 actually comply, leaving a whole 35% operating in non-compliance. And just thinking about it and having observed, the Nairobi businesses, I would actually say this is quite a big percentage, probably depending on, where the study was actually done, labda ilifanywa industrial area. I believe the number could actually be a bit lower than this. But all in all, the point is that over 1/3 of workplaces in Nairobi are risking it. They're winging it. They're trying to stay under the radar for various reasons, which we will be looking at as we go along. And probably it's because either they don't know the law, or if they know the law, they feel that maybe they are too small to be noticed, or it's too expensive. But as we go along, I want us to just see at what cost are we having this non-compliance, and is it sustainable? Is it something that is good for our company? And we hope by the end of the conversation, we will acknowledge that compliance is not just paperwork, but it's an insurance actually. It is something that protects us from going before the judge and being told your company has been closed, or getting higher premiums, or your brand reputation being destroyed. Just a quick did you know fact about the fines by MCA and OSHA, that some go up to 4 million. For OSHA, it can go up to 1 million, especially when a life is lost. And also possible jail time. So 6 months, 3 months, depending on the complexity or how bad the offense is. And the thing I want us to reflect on is that penalties, it's not like taxes, how you can negotiate with KRA wakupatie some, leeway. Penalties it's a done deal. It's non-negotiable. So once the judge says you're paying the 4 million, you will have to cough up the 4 million. So even as we dig into that, just a bit of introduction again for those ones who are new to us. So as I said, we want to make compliance and management systems drive growth and resilience and not fear. We want to make it practical, profitable, and impactful. And our vision is to be an unforgettable authority for tailored, innovative, and risk-based solutions for companies. And we want to do this through understanding our clients deeply, thinking boldly, thinking outside the box, thinking without the box, and building intentionally, building systems, building resilience intentionally, guided by curiosity. We want to find out what are our clients about, what do they need, who are they, how can we help, seeking clarity from our clients, and also care. And our values are as displayed there, and they spell out the word steady. And this is what we want our clients to have, a steady journey as we partner together, as they grow, as they become more resilient through synergy, tenacity, excellence, agility, dependability, and also the yield, because outcome is everything for clients. So why do we insist on legal compliance? Why do we insist on following the law? Of course, for the first thing is because we want our companies or our organizations to be legitimacy. We want our regulators, our insurers, our investors to believe and to trust in the brands that we have, the organizations that we have, the companies that we have. And with that, they will build confidence in us, and we'll be able to continue with our business smoothly. There's also the issue of continuity, which is what we're talking about in terms of stability and resilience, and being able to handle crises and risks as well as audits. There's the issue of scalability, in terms of having frameworks that enable, safe expansion wherever you are. So that if you are in Kenya and you have started your company, or your organization is in one county, if you're able to comply in that one county and even comply to the national laws, it will be easy for you to scale out to other counties and even outside of Kenya. And then there's the issue of trust. Trust is a very strong currency for organizations, and we want them to have, reliability and, ethics and governance as they grow and as they expand. So just as a way for you to get also involved, I want you to scan the QR code, and we can discuss. I want to hear from you rather, what you think the difference between compliance and conformance is. So you can just scan, and I hope you're hearing me loud and clear. If you're not, kindly just make a comment or react so that I'm able to do better. So yeah, we want to know the difference between compliance and conformance. What do you understand by the word compliance and conformance? And then you could also answer which law among the many Kenyan laws, especially in your industry, in construction, manufacturing, oil and gas, which law among the ones you're following in your organization, which one are you least confident about? So you can also join, there's a prompt on your screen. You can also join through the prompt, or you can scan the QR code. And I'll give you a few minutes to answer that. Karibuni sana for the ones who have joined us a bit later, as we had just begun, but we are just on the introductory part. I know I got some feedback about Mentimeter being a bit confusing, but we also want to help you as you gear up for also international and other regional webinars. I've seen many international speakers use Mentimeter, mainly because of the graphs and the analytics it helps, and it just makes it a bit more interesting. So just bear with us. as we also try to help you navigate that. So you can scan the QR code or you can join by writing www.mentimeter.com and then use the code that Brian has sent on the chat box. So I'm hoping answers will be coming in. Ni Friday, so tuchangamke. I know it's raining in some parts, like here in Roiro, it's actually raining. Yeah, so let's see what answers you have for us. What's the difference between compliance and conformance? There's an answer that has come in. Compliance, following mandatory laws, regulations. Conformance is voluntary. Um, okay, i.e. best industry practices. Anyone else? Please participate so that we all learn together. We all learn together as we try and answer these questions. We want to make the session interactive. Okay, if you are not able to use Mentimeter, you can use the chat box. You're not restricted to do so. You can also unmute and speak if you're brave enough to do so. You can just raise your hand and then our host Clara will be able to unmute you and you can speak. What's the difference between compliance and conformance? What do you understand by those two terms? Okay, just to be sure that I'm not speaking to myself, kindly make a reaction on using the react button so that nijue siko peke yangu. Labda nimemute by mistake. Kindly react so that I know we are together and that you're here, you're present. Thank you, Clara. Thank you, Brian. That's my team. Thank you so much for the support. Thank you, Theo. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Levis, Mercy, Winfred. I can see you're all here. Okay, great. So, yes, I can see some more answers coming in. Compliance is, yes, tagged on legal regulations, while conformance ensures product meets customer requirements. Okay, thank you for the feedback. I think the good thing about adult learning, or Gumbaru, here in Kenya we call it that, is that typically there is no right and wrong answer. We go as we learn. It's not like the way we were, doing in primary school and the teacher would put X's on your paper and tell you to do better. Here we are all learning and we appreciate all the answers because, you're coming from different spaces, different industries, different experiences. So I really implore you to just try answering the questions so that it's a bit more interactive and fun for all of us. Compliance and conformance. What's the difference? What do you think the difference is? Or is there even a difference? If there is none, you can write they're just the same. I'll give you 1 more minute. One more minute. You can also answer the second question, which is which law among the many laws that you're complying to, even as a Kenyan, or even as an EHS officer, EHS manager, sustainability manager, compliance manager, which law are you least confident about? Like if the government body enforcing whichever laws that govern you would come knocking at your door, ni mgani atakutetemesha? Like which one would you really feel where you're not really at par? MCA? Uh-huh. MCA, yeah, and it's quite bulky. It's quite bulky. Data protection. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think data protection really confuses a lot of people as well. Extended producer responsibility and data protection. Okay. Yeah, extended producer responsibility is quite new. It has really, changed the environment space, especially for manufacturers. It really turned tables. Um, Public health laws. Yes, that one is also a big one. It's also really quite bulky. Cap 242. It's something else. And the fact that it's still a bit, old, it hasn't been changed. Some things you really wonder, hapa, how does it apply? Talking about cowsheds and pit latrines and all that. Yeah. Any other laws that really confuse you or make you feel you're not confident enough? Of course, we will not be able to cover all of them. It's not a, legal class 101, but we will mainly focus on MCA and OSHA, as well as WIBA, because we are first starting off from the EHS point of view. But whatever concepts and tips we will give, you'll be able to navigate even these other laws. And I think as a compliance manager or a compliance officer and HS officer, there's a lot of reading to be done, a lot of awareness to be done in terms of you familiarizing yourself, especially when you hear that a law is coming into play. Like you really need to start reading the drafts, the bills, so that you're a bit ahead of the game. As we also discussed in the ISO class, in terms of if you hear there is a review of a standard, like you need to get your hands onto, onto the, the draft copies so that you start preparing slowly. So thank you for your contributions. Yeah. So what you stand to gain from this webinar or this masterclass is three things. Our three C's, the same ones we had on the ISO class. We want you to have clarity. We want you to have competence. And these two, the clarity and the competence, will build your confidence, even as you work, whether you're a manager, a business owner, whatever position you're in the company, you'll be able to have these three things as you go through the legal compliance issues. And we hope by the end of all this, you will testify that you've actually have had some clarity, some competence, some level of competence in legal matters, and of course, confidence in, improving your systems and all that. We want to tie in how ISO systems and legal compliance, what is the convergence point, and how can, how can ISO systems be able to help you to have a more structured way of managing legal compliance. So as we looked at ISO systems last time, we had the 10 clauses, and we've just highlighted on the on four clauses which directly touch on legal compliance. However, I'd like to say that legal compliance will come into play in all the 10 clauses. So in clause 4, there's a categorical um, demand by the standard that we have to identify our interested parties, what in common language we call the stakeholders. So with this identification of the interested parties, some of them are now government bodies like KEBS, DOSH, NEMA, depending on which industry you're in. KRA, of course, cuts across. DOSH, NEMA also kind of cuts across all sectors. So once you identify these interested parties, then you are supposed to also identify what are their needs and what are what are their needs, and what are their expectations, as we had covered last time. So the needs are the must do's, and the expectations are what they perceive you to be doing. So if, for example, we have like the interested party like NEMA, of course, now their needs and expectations, their needs would be whatever is articulated in the MCA and the related regulations, such as whatever you've said, like the EPR, the noise regulations, the water quality regulations, all that. So whatever NEMA has articulated in the law, that would be the need. So you need to go back to your law, check out which parts of that MCA apply to your context, apply to your organization, apply to your company. Of course, some of them like cut across, like for example, the environmental audits, keeping records about your company, that also cuts across. In some cases, for industries which have effluent, that would be applicable for all industries and all homesteads. Things like waste management cuts across. So that would be a need that you'd need to articulate and then find out exactly what is needed. So in context or clause 4, that is a specific place where ISO interlinks with legal compliance. Then for planning, you'd need to understand that some of these legal, in fact, all legal requirements or compliance obligations, as is put in ISO 14001, they inherently create either a risk or an opportunity. So let me put it into perspective. Like for the EPR, now, it is a risk to the manufacturers because especially those ones who had not started voluntarily adhering to the life cycle in terms of how their waste ends up at the dump sites and all that. If you had not thought about the life cycle of your products or your waste management, then it would have been a risk, or it is still a risk. And I know people like now the supermarkets, before they were not, packing like things like sugar. They were not packing things like, they didn't have bakeries like Kitambo, maybe like 10 years ago. People like Naivas, Tuskys, Nakumat, they didn't have bakeries within the supermarket. We used to rely on people like, Superloaf, Ken Blessed and all that. But now that they saw a gap, and that for them was an opportunity, right? So they made bakeries within the supermarkets, and they started packing or repacking sugar into now their brands, Tuskys, Nakumat, whatever, Naivas, Quickmart. Now that to them was an opportunity, right? It was a business opportunity. But now with the incoming of the EPR, it now becomes a risk. Why? Because essentially, as a supermarket, you have no producer responsibility in terms of waste, because essentially you're just supposed to be like the middleman. You connect Superloaf or Ken Blessed to me, Wairimo, the client at the end. So essentially they would have not been affected by the EPR. But now that they are packing, they now become, smack in the middle of this EPR, and they now have to have a plan. They have to join the PROs. Now it becomes a risk to them. Now, on the flip side, people like Park Pro, Care Pro, and many other, upcoming PROs saw this as an opportunity. So for Park Pro, they saw it as an opportunity to rebrand and expand, because it's essentially before they were called, oh my gosh, the name has slipped my mind, but it was started by Coca-Cola and the rest, and they had already started the voluntary system. So for them, this EPR law becomes an opportunity for them to rebrand as Park Pro and expand to other producers and other, not just PET. Oh yes, they were called Petco because they were dealing only with PET. So now they saw a chance to expand to not just PET, but to all plastics, metals, etc., etc. So that's how essentially I saw, overlaps with compliance. Then in terms of performance, as you monitor all your other KPIs, Some of the KPIs will actually be driven by compliance. So a KPI like 100% compliance to effluent parameters, that one is like directly related to a compliance requirement. So as you monitor other KPIs, you'll also have to be monitoring your compliance requirements and update your register, whether it's the legal register or the risk and opportunities register or your context register. So it's something that you need to keep working on in terms of performance, in terms of also speaking at your management reviews. You need to update the leadership, and they also need to give you feedback on how they're supporting you and giving you that assurance and commitment towards compliance. And then in clause 10, of course, there's the issue of improvement. If you ever get an unconformity that is directly related to a legal requirement, most of the times it's actually almost a major, because it's a serious thing. It's a mandatory thing. It's those words we were talking about, shall. Shall equals a must equals a mandatory requirement. So once you get such non-conformities, then it means you need to fix them quickly and you need to fix them completely. Why I use the word completely is because essentially you're supposed to have corrective actions that that actually correct the mistake, the root cause, so that it doesn't recur again. And with all this becomes the issue of continual improvement. So you can use compliance as a tool for continual improvement. So let's say you're a compliance manager and you caught wind that they are going to have the APR regulation and you have the bill. Now, instead of waiting until it becomes a law or, trying to dilly-dally as you wait until things settle or NEMA finds enough, staff to come do the inspections, you can actually go ahead of the game and start putting in systems to improve your company, your systems. So compliance can also be a driver for improvement and a very good tool for continual improvement. So those are some of the interlinkages between ISO and how it can help you to be more structured in your compliance. So before we get to this slide, just to make it clear on the question we had asked in terms of what's the difference between compliance and conformance. Indeed, conformance is voluntary. It's action that the organization or the company takes out of wao kutaka, voluntary, such as ISO and one of the suggestions was best practices. So whatever best practices in your industry, you volunteer to adhere to it. And then number two is the issue of those standards are recognized or they are best practices in the industry, depending on, it's either it can be a standard, it can be a specification, or it can be the norms of whatever industry that you're in. And it can be driven by yourself, like self-imposed, you as the company, you as the organization, or the industry, pushing you towards it. But just note that for conformance, it's not directly related to a legal obligation. So it's driven by you volunteering to adhere to it. Then for compliance, it is mandatory adherence to an external law or a regulation or a requirement that is actually enforced by a government body. So is what we're talking about, like what MCA is enforced by NEMA, what OSHA and WIBA are enforced by DOSH, and the KEBS standard enforced by KEBS, etc., or the finance issues enforced by KRA, where you have no leeway. It's like you have to do it. So compliance is mandatory and it has legal consequences, which we are going to talk about, which are like the penalties or the jail time or, closures and stuff like that. Now, I know that many small businesses or SMEs would say that compliance is expensive, it's unpredictable, there are so many changes, there are so many laws, but essentially each organization or each manager who is in charge of compliance should be able to have a plan. Like take it step by step. Don't, try and capture everything all at once. First of all, I would know what laws are within your industry. Try and identify which are the laws, which are these interested parties within my industry, and then try and articulate what exactly do they need. So for OSHA, it would need maybe a workplace registration, an OSH audit, a risk assessment, a fire safety audit, a fire drill, first aid training, first aid kits, fire extinguishers and other firefighting equipment, all that. For MCA, it would require, an EIA, an environmental audit, licenses like the effluent license or the air quality license, articulate them. And then also know at what sequence or frequency are they supposed to be done. And you'll find most of them, because the law is usually the bare minimum, it's actually usually less strict as compared to maybe like best practices or recognized standards. So now, once you articulate, you'll find that maybe the most frequent would be maybe monthly, like for the KRA and the Employment Act in terms of things like NSSF remission and, NHIF remission and all that. But the others would actually be something like quarterly or biannually or annually. And you'll find actually most of these requirements are annual. So once you're able to plan and structure, then it will be easier for you to also plan your resources and know at what point you need to, renew or plan for the compliance requirement. So now I want us to also get into another poll. This time we can use the Brian, kindly just remove the join Mentimeter prompt on the screen, kindly. I want us to use, we can use the chat box, or you can unmute, or you can also use the poll for, let me stop sharing. We can use the poll for the poll on Zoom as well, just to hear from you. Maybe Brian, you can put up the questions, or I just show the screen again. I don't know if the poll is ready. And if there are any questions so far, maybe you can also ask. You can just raise your hand and then we can unmute and you can ask. Okay, yeah, so you can use Mentimeter, you can use the chat box, you can use, you can unmute and speak. So our question one, what is your biggest barrier to compliance? You can choose among the answers, but if you have any other answer apart from the ones suggested, you can also just put it on the chat box. So let's hear from you. Kindly give me a reaction just to know that we are together, that you can still hear me, that you can, yes, cost concerns. Yes, cost concerns. Yeah, that's usually a big barrier to compliance, especially for smaller organizations, but also surprisingly, even for big organizations, they feel that compliance is a liability and it's, draining their budget. It's a taker from the budget rather than, other departments which are, bringing in the cash, cash cows like sales department and, marketing department. But I want us to see as we go along how we can leverage and shift the mindset so that our leaders can also be able to support us and see the bigger picture in terms of how compliance can be a stimulant of growth and resilience and, trust and legitimacy and all that. Time constraints. Time constraints are the amount of time, you put in, the energy, the effort. Uh-huh. Any other reactions? Lack of awareness. Yes. Yes, actually, that's a big barrier. If people are not aware, then it becomes really difficult to put, to be on the same page, to sail in the same boat, so to speak. And it becomes even worse, especially if you're the leader. Either you're in leadership or you're the person driving compliance. If you yourself, you're not aware, then it becomes a, double tragedy. Any other concerns? Any other answers, maybe? Good people. We are just a few. We're just 8. So it's a small, intimate team. Kindly just use the chat box, use Mentimeter. Give me a reaction so that I know tuko pamoja. And if you have a question, you can also ask. What are your thoughts, Winfred? Who else has not spoken? Eric, Levis. Who else has not spoken? Someone? Anybody else? Okay. Now, maybe we can go to the next question. Yeah, we can go to the next question so that we also, yeah. So what is your biggest motivator for compliance? So now we've talked about your challenges in terms of what bars you from actually being confident in your compliance evaluation or your status. But what is your biggest motivator? Whether you're in charge of driving compliance or you're in the top leadership. I know some of us are consultants, some of us are, uko na side hustle, or you are in a family business, apart from the work that you are doing, your 9 to 5, as a leader, as the top management in whatever other side hustle that you have, what would be your biggest motivator? Or even as the person driving compliance in your organization, whether you're an EHS officer or manager, or you're the compliance officer, what is the biggest motivator you have for driving compliance? Is it the business and market growth? Is it customer trust? Is it risk protection? Is it credibility? Your answers, please. Okay, kindly give me a reaction just to know that we are together, that you can hear me. Kindly give me a reaction. You can put a thumbs up. You can give me a love heart or the celebration thing. Okay, good. I can see tuko pamoja. So, yes, Mercy says all are applicable. But which one is your biggest, Mercy? As the EHS officer or manager in the place that you work, what makes you push compliance? And it can be even outside the answers that we've given. Maybe it's out of fear. It's out of fear that hutaki Nema wakuje knocking and you're the one who is answerable. Yeah, thank you, Theo. To avoid legal action. Yeah, it could be coming out of fear, driving business growth, risk protection. Uh-huh. Okay, great. Customer trust. Okay. Sawa, we can go to the next one. Brian, you can go to the next question, which is the last one, which is actually where would you rate yourself now? Supposing I'm the auditor or ISO or I'm a government inspector and I'm coming to your office premises, whether you work in whichever industry that you work, on a scale of 1 to 100%, as you examine yourself, as you examine your system, where would you say you are at? Looking at all the legal requirements that you are supposed to comply to, KRA, NEMA, DOSH, zote, KEBS, public health, there's a county. Put all of them into perspective and then tell me between 0% to 100%, where would you place your company? Whichever company it is that you are working for, where would you put yourself? Answers, please. 70%. Fairly good. 50%. Okay. Any other feedback? Where would you put yourself? 70% is actually good. 50%, And it's good to be honest with yourself as well. I don't know how many have ISO systems already in place. And one of the requirement for ISO is the evaluation, the performance under clause 9 on performance. There is the compliance evaluation. So do you usually, measure yourself? Like for MCAR, we are at 60%. For OSHA, we are at 20%, because whatever is not measured, inakuwa ngumu to improve on it. It's not known. In ISO, we say, and generally, if you can't document it, if you can't measure it, then it's not there. Mercy, well done, 90%. The remaining percent is for the auditor's third eye. Okay. Great. But ideally, especially those ones who have implemented ISO, one of the requirements is actually to evaluate yourself. So I don't know if you've been audited for that clause. You're supposed to actually have a way you measure. And that would be interesting to know, maybe from one or two of you, how you actually measure. And yeah, Mercy, if you can unmute, maybe can tell us how you measured, like how did you come up with the 90? Brian, maybe you can now stop sharing the Mentimeter. I think we are good. Mercy, are you able to talk? Okay. Okay, you can just type in the chat box. Jackie, are you able to talk, maybe? Tell us how maybe you arrived at, it's raining heavily. Okay, yes, I hear you. You can type in the chat box. Jackie, maybe you can speak out, or Theo, how did you arrive at the 70 or the 80?
Hi, Gladys. Okay, so I was looking at the regulations or the compliance needs in as much as OHS is concerned. So, like from a tracker that we did recently, you can clearly see that we are compliant in this area and you are not compliant in this. One example is the current update on first aid rules and whatnot. So we had an audit done and we are clearly not compliant. We are not yet up to par with that new regulation. And we have a lot of challenges with people trying to adopt the new requirements as much as first aid rules are concerned.
Yeah.
So we cannot say that we are at 100% in as much as we are compliant on other areas of OHS. I think that's my reaction.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And with every, maybe you can clap for her or give her a reaction, a thumbs up. You know, it with the new laws coming and changing, of course, even the government gives us a leeway, enough time, not enough, but some time to adopt and, and change to the changing times. But as I said, if you're able to get wind of a bill, especially with the whole issue that public participation is one of the requirements for all laws. If you get into these spaces where you are able to get wind of a new requirement coming in, start trying to, kuingiza leadership box and telling them there's something coming ahead. Like you should be the signpost, telling them 50 meters, kukona bumps ahead. So, and it's good that you already have a tracker and you know exactly where the the downside is. Like it could be very specific. Maybe it's the training or they have introduced the first aiders should have what a medical test. I think it's for
Hepatitis B vaccine,
yes,
yeah.
yes, the vaccination. So, I mean, you can even, dig deeper and find out exactly which clause you have not complied to. And it would be best to do it internally before an external auditor comes into your scene and tells you these are the mistakes. Whether you're, ISO certified or not, it is way better to try and discover where are the pitfalls, ni wapi hatuja kamilika. Mercy says we have a system where we monitor legal regulations applicable to organizations. We have external auditors coming to check. Okay, yes, work at Gemba and to check their adherence. Yeah, we could also, I like the fact that you talked about also checking through Gemba. Gemba is basically when you're walking about the factory. It's Japanese word for, walking exactly into the shop floor and seeing if you actually are implementing. Because for organizations, especially bigger ones, their paperwork could be very neatly done, very, it's on point. So they could actually be seeing themselves, or the leadership could actually be seeing themselves as compliant. But when you go to the ground, things are totally different. So it's good to check both on the ground as well as, the documentation internally before giving the external, auditor a chance. It's better when you know the mistakes yourself. And especially if you are now ISO certified, when you have already identified these gaps, then the auditor, the third party auditor usually never writes those as gaps. Yeah, so if it's something you've already identified, maybe it's in your MR, management review. Management review is basically the meetings that you have between the management, the top management, and maybe the middle management, where they discuss how the progress is. So if you've written it in your minutes, you've already identified those gaps, or it's in your internal audit reports, the external auditor will not give you a gap because already unajua what is missing and and if you show them the plan, you show them a plan of how you're going to get to the right path, then they will not give you an unconformity. So now we know the Titanic and how it was, built magnificently, and they had this grand opening, and they called it the unsinkable ship, and they talked about how not even God could sink it. Probably that is what jinxed it, but the point is they hit an iceberg. Tip of the iceberg was tiny, and they thought this big ship, this tiny iceberg, piece of cake. But they didn't know beneath what they could see was a huge chunk of the iceberg, which now brought the whole ship down. And this is what brings big organizations down. The fact that they just see the consequences of non-compliance as just a tip of the iceberg. It's something we can overlook, especially here in Kenya. With the issues of corruption, sad to say, they're like, tutaongea na mtu wa niko na connection na, but when we really look into it and how detrimental non-compliance can be, then we'll be able to show leadership, or even ourselves, we'll be able to see that we need to really take compliance seriously and look at it as an insurance, as a protection, as a cover for our business. So at the very top, we basically know the financial risks, the fines, the penalties, the unplanned costs, the higher premiums for insurance. By higher premiums, I mean, if you are a more risky business, like for we buy and the personal liability covers, the more incidents you have, the higher your premiums will be because the insurance companies are also in business. So the higher of a risk you are, the more premiums they will give you. Of course, we know all this, and even the top leadership knows all that. They know about losing contracts and tenders. They know about business being interrupted. They know about court cases and legal fees. But sometimes it usually seems far-fetched. They are thinking, first of all, NEMA and DOSH and KEBS and all these organizations or these legal bodies, they are probably distant from them or under-resourced. So at what point will they catch me when I'm in Roiro in my small manufacturing business, or when I'm in Moranga in my small business? And it becomes easy to overlook such things, and it becomes very far-fetched to see that you can be taken to court or you can be given a fine. But apart from the financial risks, there is also the operational risks. That work can be stopped. When an accident happens, of course, work stops. Even if it's for a minute, for that 1 minute that the person amekatwa kidole ama amepata scratch, work has stopped. There's time that has lapsed. There's money that has gone down the drain. There's the delays in projects. There's loss of productivity. There's the supply chain disruption. So if an incident happens and maybe DOSH gets wind of it and they come to investigate, obviously, the supply chain will be disrupted because people, especially in the digital age, will get to hear about it. And maybe one or two suppliers can drop out, or investors can drop out. There is the unplanned downtime. If NEMA comes knocking and they find you non-compliant and they give you a stop order, that means maybe 7 days, 14 days, 30 days, 21 days, whatever number of days they'll give you until you correct the issue. That time, the money, the energy, the resources will have gone down the drain. There is the legal risk. Now, here comes the part where the laws like DOSH and MCA, they not only now target the organization, they also target the director or the top leadership, the top management. So whether it's the CEO or it's the director or the manager, there is that personal liability. They themselves will be taken to court, will be charged, will be, jailed or whatever. So apart from looking at it as just the organization going to court, what about you as the manager? What about you as the CEO? You need to bring this into perspective as you are giving your case on why compliance should be taken seriously. Then there is the issue of human and social risks, which we mentioned, the incidents, the deaths. Here we are gambling with people's life. If you don't comply, if you don't outline your risks and create awareness to your staff about these are the risks and these are the controls in place, you're gambling with people's lives. There's the health risks, there's the industrial disputes, there's the community backlash. We've seen cases where industries like the one at the coast where they were dealing with batteries, and the community got affected, and there was now the backlash and the suing, and we've also seen many other cases in the public eye. There's an industry in Thika which was doing a lot of chemicals and affecting people's health, all that. There is the actual brand and reputation at risk, where you have bad publicity, you lose the customer trust that Mercy was talking about. There is the investors, they lose confidence in you, and they can revoke their privileges or the money they're investing. And now there's also the issue of recovery time. So suppose you've been taken to court or you have been given a stop order. fine, you could be able to actually pay for the fees. You could be able to even pay your PA people, your publicity people to keep things under wrap. But as you're coming back to yourself in terms of how much you keep on producing, going back to the normal, that recovery time also costs your business in terms of time, resources, money, all that. That's also something to consider. There's also the issue of strategy and growth, disqualification from tenders and funding, missed market opportunities, loss of competitive advantage, and, barriers to scaling. And all this is what you need to bring to perspective to the top leadership, and not just the top leadership, but also the people on the shop floor. As an EHS manager, as a compliance manager, you're the bridge between the top and the bottom. And you're supposed to be able to make awareness fit both scenarios. The top side, where you'll be talking about money and time, and the bottom or the lower end of the spectrum, which is the shop floor, where now you're supposed to reach them at a one-to-one or personal level, at a behavioral level. So it's usually a tricky balance when you're in the middle as a middle manager, but it can be done. So of course you won't go with such a PowerPoint presentation when you're going to top leadership and telling them about the iceberg and giving them these words. So how can we present it in a way that they're able to understand, they're able to see it's actually a risk? As your sales manager is presenting their budget, the marketing manager is also presenting their budget for 5 million so that they can have billboards. You have your small budget of 1 million where you want to do training for first aiders, you want to put in the vaccination for your first aiders. So how do you navigate that space of arguing out in terms of money and time? Because those are the terms, or that is the language for the upper level. They don't want sentences, they don't want nice pictures in your presentation. They talk of time and money. They talk of return on investment. So how can you be able to navigate talking to the top management about how important compliance is? When we come to next month's session, we will now be looking at OSH. We will zoom in on OSH, and maybe that is when we will talk about how to talk to the shop floor, to the lower spectrum, in terms of BBS, the behavioral safety, how to get them to one-on-one, how to make them understand that compliance is relatable to them, how you can change their mindset on that side. But today we are going to focus on the top management bit. So like, for instance, we have the issue of MCAM, whereby if you fail to have the EIA done or the audit, it can cost you up to 5 million or even 3 years in jail. Now, there is, as we know it, in sentence form, in paragraph form, it could be a closure of the business or court order to compensate an affected community. It can come in different formats. The rest, I think you will read as you go through the presentation, but this is one of the tricks you can use to communicate money for money. I know the Gen Zs these days are using a catchphrase. Is it a catchphrase? A phrase, aura for aura, which means tit for tat, right? I just learned it. So me as a millennial, I'm still catching up. So when they say aura for aura, they mean, like with like, tit for tat. So as you go to the space, we're talking to the top leadership, and you want them to comply to this new law on first aid, on this new law of, on EPR. Try and put it into money. So you're asking for 30,000 to do a fire audit or an OSH audit, which is actually sometimes the market price, an estimated minimum of like 30,000. It can go higher depending on your organization, how big the organization is. Supposing it's even 100,000, right? Now, take that 30,000, compare it to the maximum fine that you would be liable for. So for instance, for OSHA, it's 1 million. I think that is clause 111, but we can confirm of OSHA. I mean, yeah, chapter 111. where it talks about, especially if there is injury or death out of, determined that it was actually out of non-compliance or negligence, then the company can actually be fined 1 million. Now, you can show the top leadership that this is like 33 times what you're asking for. And this is how you can negotiate to have your budget for ESG, for EHS, for OSH to be met when you're telling them this small budget of 30,000 compared to the 1 million that we can be fined by DOSH, which one is the lesser evil? Like, which one do you choose? And once you know, the best thing about the law, once you have documented, once you have presented such a case, you are exempt from the court process because like you're not liable. You spoke the truth and you put it into figures that they could understand. So the burden now comes to the leadership. They are now left with the decision. So make them have the decision. You present what is necessary, you present the data, you present and if you're able to even show companies that have gone down because of this, or even with your own data in terms of maybe you've been having ISO audits and you've been failing about a specific non-compliance over and over and over. You can use that data or an incident that you can directly relate to a non-conformity or a non-compliance. So for instance, you have cats. Every day you just have cats, cats, cats. And it's because of a machine that is not guarded. Now, you can talk to the HR person, and this is where synergy or managers, the compliance managers or the EHS managers, you really need to learn how to influence and learn how to lead through influence, whereby you don't have the data for HR or the production manager in terms of how much money is spent by the downtime. That would probably be sitting with the HR or with the production or the operations manager, right? But how can you help them, show them that you want to help them reduce on this downtime so that they come into, you become a team and they can give you the figures to show you easy incidents. The premiums are this much. The WIBA charges are this much. Now, when we are asking for 30,000 to do the audit, when you're asking for 50,000 to guard a machine, we are helping the company, one, evade the 1 million fine, two, evade the premiums, whether the HR will tell you they have now come up to 500,000 or the downtime has reached up to what, 100,000. You can now be able to justify. I know at first it will be a lot of work in terms of you getting the data, especially if the company is very silo system where the HR anafanya kazi yake, every department is just a standalone. But it needs you to take that diplomacy and take that step to be able to have that synergy with other managers and show them that you're helping them achieve their KPIs. And that's the only way, as an EHS manager, you can be able to win and be able to justify your budget, especially when we have the issue of, oh, it's too costly, oh, it's, why do we have to do it? These are some of the tips we can give. Now, adding on to the practical tips, why we are not able to do it, I think we already discussed the lack of awareness, the perception that laws are a burden, and they are not enablers to the business, the fragmented documentation. If you have, what I'm talking about, the siloed system, you have documents on Excel, others are on Google, others are on, Zoho, others are in sales department, others are in, when all this documentation or the data, I would rather even call it the data, if it's fragmented, then it becomes very hard for you to connect the dots and be able to argue your case. When you have a wrong mindset, if the leadership or the culture is a firefighting culture where you just wait for until you hear now NEMA is giving you the last warning, that's when you're rushing to do the audits, when you're rushing to, buy the fire equipment, or the ISO auditor is coming next week, that's when you're asking sorry, the inspectors of the fire equipment to come and inspect and put the stickers. That's a wrong notion, and that's where you find yourself, you're always caught up. So how can you overcome the challenges? If you are the CEO, then you should, one, own compliance. Let it start from you. Don't lead blindly. Two, make it part of the strategy and truly mean it to be part of the strategy, because it will help you be able to grow and scale and become reputable. Three, you have to put in resources. Even as we said in ISO, leadership is there to give direction, to give resources and support, and to give the strategy and direction. Now, as an EHS manager, as a compliance manager, you need to map out the laws as we had said before. Map them out. You can use the ISO skeleton that we discussed last time. Make sure you know who are the interested parties and what their needs are, what their requirements are. Then try and have a plan. If you know that registrations are annual, licenses are annual, audits are annual, whatever needs to be done quarterly, like the effluent, whatever needs to be done after 2 years, after 3 years, have a plan. And then also build awareness. And as we said, build awareness on both ends, top and bottom. So make sure that your teams are trained, keep talking to them through the toolbox talks, or the quality circle meetings, whatever you call them. And also make sure that you're talking about it in the MRs, the management reviews, where you are, linking with the top management. And so those are some of the practical tips. I don't know if you have any questions. I know I'm a bit past time, 15 minutes in. Do you have any questions? Any questions? So as I wait for you, yes,
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 I understand that, yes, we are trying, the companies, the SMEs are trying to, as much as possible, to be compliant. But do you think, or the team here, do you guys think that the enforcing agencies also are part of the systemic problems that we have? Because sometimes you find you've pushed for these things to be compliant, your companies to be compliant, and then
mm-hmm.
somehow inafika mahali inafaa kufika, the enforcing agency mwenye anafaa kuenforce anakula something
Mm-hmm.
below the table, and then that story slides until like something big happens, maybe an accident or something, and then everybody's like, oh, I didn't issue an improvement notice, I didn't do this. So do you think that the 35% non-compliances that you're talking about,
Yes.
you feel that the enforcing agencies are have a part to play in that?
Yeah, what do you guys think? What do you feel about that before I give my opinion? Thank you, Jackie, for that question. I think it's something, we can, talk about maybe for a minute. Someone who can unmute and just speak. What do you feel about that? Maybe you're the EHS manager, you're the compliance manager, you're really pushing, but because there is corruption, let's just call a spade a spade. You're pushing for something, but kunakuwa na shortcuts. What do you feel about that? Anyone? Is there anyone who wants to speak or comment? You can use the chat box. I know people are saying it's raining. So my thought is, yes, of course, it's a reality that corruption is there, but it should not dishearten you from doing the right thing. And I think one of the good things, I think two things actually, two things that I'm liking about where Kenya is going towards. One, the digital space. The fact that NEMA has the portal, and now they've even revamped it to Envis, and DOSH has gone into DOSH MIS. I think with the digital era, now things will be a bit more stringent. Because sasa, on the portal, it's either you have the license or you don't. It's either you have uploaded the audit or you have not. It's either you have, things will be a bit more candid now, just like with KRA and their e-teams and all that. I think the direction that we're taking, and also the fact that they are now integrating things into e-citizen, I could be wrong, but I see the future of Kenya being that all the government bodies will kind of be integrated, and you can see a hint of it through the EPR regulations when they're talking about how they will have a linkage between KRA and NEMA. So that when you're a manufacturer and you are bringing in plastics or whatever packaging, and it's at the port, they will require, KRA will have to seize that first to see that you're complying to NEMA so that they can release. And I think with that integration, it will be now a bit more difficult to have all this, corruption. Number two, some of the things that they are doing, like currently, like for NEMA, and I think even for DOSH maybe, but NEMA is the one I know, the reshuffling of the officers. So unapata the county director of environment wa Kiambu, si yeye atakuwa throughout. So you might have ties with the CDE of Kiambu for now, but 2 months down the line, and maybe that's when your license has already expired, a new CDE is coming in. So, all that, I think these small steps also the government or the system is trying to do, I think it's also a plus, and we are heading, I think, to the right direction. So I think for us, like, just do the right thing, push for the right thing, show them that the shortcuts are going to cut them short. I think that would be my comment. Maybe more people can give input as we continue. I think we've also nearly come to the end of the discussion. Sorry for taking, 15 minutes of your time. But our call to action is, of course, to join the mini lab next week on Friday. Hopefully, you'll be available. I know it's a holiday, but maybe you can also give us feedback on the group if you'll be available. If not, we can change it maybe or know how to go about it. And then the individual quiz and the feedback form, which is usually at the end of the classes. We really appreciate feedback. We really want to have feedback. And in as much as we have a system that we want to, cultivate and keep, the input is also helping us to know how to navigate. And then after all that, after you've done the quiz and the feedback form and the mini lab on 10th, we will have access to the material and you'll have your certificate. So look out for the material on Seller as well as group communication. For those ones who are not in the September one, I think it was just Winfred and I think she has left. You can get the materials. As we said again, it's a journey. We hope that you'll continue with us. So for November, we are doing OSH. We might be having a guest. So we are looking into that so that we're able to take a deeper dive. Yes, you've complied with the law. Yes, you've probably considered ISO, which is now our best practice. What more can we do to make the system better, to make us more OSH compliant beyond the basics? So that's what we are going to be looking at. We also encourage you to follow us, like our pages, share whatever material we have. And thank you so much for the time that you've given us and, your contributions even during this session. So asanteni sana. I will stop at that. Maybe you can give us a reaction, tell us what you thought about the session. Any questions? I hope I have not left anyone hanging. You can also just type your questions on the group. Yeah, and then we'll be able to answer them. So yeah, thank you so much for joining. Thank you for your time. There being no other questions, and I think a few have left. I think maybe it's because of the weather. I think we'll call it a night. So asanteni sana. Have a good night and have a lovely weekend. Tupatane Friday na pia kwa WhatsApp group. Asanteni sana.